Okay. Rater sensitivities and challenges while marking academic integrated reading writing essays. The outline of the presentation is a background, context of the study, methodology, and results and discussion. So a little bit information about integrated reading writing. These are labeled as reading, writing, or reading to write, integrated writing. There is an increasing attention to these tasks because they are claimed to be authentic and help students when they go to university with their writing, because writing at university involves reading as well. So you have to also read as well as use that information in order to write. And therefore, integrated writing assessment tasks represent a unique construct because it's both reading and writing. They require students to engage in demanding activities such as reading, mining the source text, and selecting information and incorporating those ideas into writing. And because these tasks are difficult, well, different, rating them also brings challenges in raters' sensitivities, which are different from writing when they rate writing only tasks. For example, one of the most important thing is that students, because they use ideas from reading sources, then scoring in instances of copying or textual borrowing becomes problematic. Or raters have been recorded having difficulties when deciding what should be considered as copying, or when actually they notice copying or textual borrowing. These are some of the challenges which have been published, specifically recording or addressing raters' challenges or difficulties when rating. So these studies on rater challenges have been conducted with different tasks. The task requirements in these the requirements in these integrated writing assessments are different. For example, those tasks require students to read short paragraphs, or reading two source texts opposing each other, or writing an essay, a short essay, and writing counter arguments based on these opposing source texts, or acknowledging those source texts. And rating scales that have been used in these studies are different: holistic or analytic, but not detailed enough. So these differences suggest that we need more information to better understand concept of academic integrated reading writing, specifically when reading writing assessment task is different than from simpler versions of integrated essays or tasks. So integrated reading writing tests was developed based on domain requirements in first year humanities and social science courses at a New Zealand university. And the aim was to assess students' preparedness for first year reading and writing based on a more authentic integrated reading writing assessment task. So in a different study, the first phase, I conducted target language. I specified target language with domain analysis, and based on this, I wanted to know how students are prepared for how they are handling with like more authentic version of the task. And here, today's presentation, my specific research questions will be from the rating perspective of it. What features raters are sensitive to, and what are the key challenges? So the task included 2 source texts from a book chapter and a journal article. Of course, I simplified it I tried not to simplify it too much. And the source texts included quotations or citations, and citations from the secondary sources as well. And the source texts, of course, didn't oppose each other. They were thematically linked on the topic was climate change. So one source text talk about the humanities perspectives of the climate change, and the other one from a journal article was presented actually a study which conducted on people's perceptions or take on climate change. And of course, students were required to write an essay grounding the ideas in the source text. It wasn't like argue and say counter arguments or very specific. It wasn't like this. And rating scale included 14 criteria. Of course, I'm not presenting the actual rating scale here, but the main point was that it's designed to elicit students' engagement with source text, expression of arguments, organization, and language. The participants were 68 first-year English as an additional language students from the writing program and 6 expert raters. So all the essays were double marked, and the raters received training on producing their Syncellot protocols. And I analyzed these protocols based on Brown and Clark semantic analysis. I will present key highlights. So what raters expected and what they found in students' writing, that good students, which they presented accurate source ideas. So the ideas were accurate. And they strategically chose source ideas rather than just for the sake of presenting source ideas, ideas from the readings. They strategically chose them because these were 2 texts and pretty long texts. They were not expected to use all of the ideas from the readings because the task didn't ask them to write a report or summary. And of course, when they chose the ideas, they were well crafted and incorporated into writing. They presented evidence and examples supported with the reading information. And here comes a question that, there should be a balance between personal views and source information. So in writing only task, students are used to write personal opinion essays. But then here they kind of may have difficulty, particularly the ones who don't have that experience or guidance. What am I going to write in a personal opinion essay and just use a little bit of some information from the readings, or will it be just mainly reading information? So good essays presented evidence and example from the readings, but their personal perspective was there as well. And good essays also demonstrated appropriate use of vocabulary. Now, with the integrated essays, because there are reading sources, and of course, in readings, there are complex, nice, sophisticated vocabulary, but good students were able to use the vocabulary appropriately, and also the vocabulary which were not which were not included in the reading source text as well. So vocabulary from their own knowledge. But what raters expected, but some students didn't present. So some students didn't show those features in their essays. And raters expected that students must reflect on source ideas instead of just showing them in writing. And source ideas must be used as evidence and examples. Students may use personal examples, but those examples must fit the purpose of the essay. For example, one essay included information how Ganges River is polluted and how what kind of effects it may have on climate change or how they are associated. But the raters expected that example to fit the purpose and also to bring evidence or supporting elements from the reading and not just leave that example there, standalone example. And students must be very skillful, strategic about choosing information from the sources and not necessarily use all of the ideas from the reading sources. So some students, some essays included information like random information, trying to show that, oh, they have used information or they have understood or they have paraphrased. But even if they did paraphrase, even if they did quote, those students, like low-level essays, didn't actually present the crafting side of the writing. And students really were very strategic, you know, when they chose information, and these are very important to notice, because if we only concentrate or if we only give importance to students' use of the source ideas and not take care of these instances, then we would mislead students. For example, students may use the idea but twist the meaning, which actually the authors didn't mean that, didn't imply that. Or they can use accurate information. Yes, you can see that those ideas used in the essay are accurate. Yes, fine, but they are not well explained, or the students are not taking those ideas further in order to present as evidence or conclude their statements. So these essays didn't receive high marks. And those were like one of the key, or some of the key highlights. And of course, because as I said, these are different from writing only tasks, raters were challenged with detecting the copied strings. So reading source texts were long. We had a rating scale and an essay. So raters are rating different, a number of essays, and that's why it may become difficult for raters to detect those copied strings. And another challenge is deciding what can be considered as copied. So how many words? For example, in TOEFL integrated writing essay research, they have identified that 3+ string of words can be considered as copied, but there is not much like information or further evidence about this. Sometimes students, of course, didn't copy, but they used 3+ strings of words, and raters had difficulty and didn't have a conclusion, okay, whether it can be considered as copying or not. And of course, penalizing it or considering as attempt of a student to write, or to use the word. And deciding whether those strings used from the sources, not copied ones, can reflect the student's vocabulary ability or not. So when they are evaluating vocabulary range, so what should we consider as a good vocabulary indicator of vocabulary range? If the student has used from the source text and has used it skillfully, accurately, does it mean it indicates that he or she indeed knew this word, or just used it from the word, just spotted in the reading source text? And therefore deciding whether they shouldn't consider the source vocabulary when marking vocabulary range, like divorcing vocabulary from the source text and saying that, okay, these are the words that were not included in the source text, and that's why we will consider only these words when rating vocabulary range. So these were some of the insights from raters' thinking while they were marking the essays. And this suggests that key implications that integrative tasks should align with the demands of reading, writing assessments, and students should practice more authentic version of integrated tasks. Because at university and mainstream university courses, students will be required to read and write, not based on short paragraphs, not based on source text opposing each other. They will need to be prepared for such more authentic version of integrated tasks. And students who have the essays, the students who have been practicing on simpler versions of integrated tasks, their essays show that they're having more difficulty compared with the students who have the grasp of academic reading, writing tasks. And students should be trained, of course, reading multiple texts, extracting ideas from those texts and using them as to support their arguments and constructing their arguments informed by the ideas in the readings. These are the requirements that I found in the domain analysis required by the lecturers. And the raters' perceptions, raters' sensitivities, and their markings show that students need guidance on reading multiple source texts. And if we leave students to read and just, just use those readings to write an idea, that won't be helpful when they go to mainstream university courses. Of course, question may arise, well, at university, they will anyway learn, so it's not our job. But what the domain analysis also showed that teachers or lecturers there have different ideas about helping students. Some may say that we don't have time. Some may say that this is not our responsibility. So when preparing students for course assignments, for mainstream university courses, their admissions, etc., we should consider these as well. And such tasks should be embraced in class assessments as well. So it's not like only for high stakes, one-off like writing. It should be embracing classroom assessment, portfolio, maybe assessment as well. And it may raise students' awareness of the actual demands at university. That university writing doesn't involve state why and why not, or argue, counter-argue, or only reading, or reading only and just finding information in the multiple choice questions, etc. But actually it is going at deeper level. And it may also help teachers, because teachers, when they assign those tasks, when they rate students' essays, their experience with rating integrated essays may increase, and this may also help them with addressing maybe some of those rating challenges, and which is very important for scoring validity as well. These are my references, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Aynur. That was a really well-paced presentation. And I've got quite a lot of questions that have come up from the online participants for you, and we may also have some in the room. So if you have a question in the room for Aynur, I will come to you in a moment if you raise your hand. Okay, so some of the questions that we've got for you. Iftikhar asks, were the sources provided for the students, or did the students have any involvement in this, in selecting the texts for this task?
No, the students were not. The students were provided with these tasks because this was like for assessment purpose. But I know that's a very good question, because in first year, for example, when they go to university, lecturers may expect them to actually find the source text. And these were one of the skills that required at university. And that's why, for example, if it is part of the classroom assessment, they can be taught about and having that, literacy before going to university. But answering to that question, no, it didn't involve, but it's important.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to slip a question of my own in there then, with you mentioning that. So you mentioned there that actually one of the difficulties students often have is that selection of texts, and perhaps the extensive reading skills that are involved in going through longer texts. To what extent do you think using this format, this reading into writing format, what sort of impact would that have if that type of assessment was used, do you think, on students' preparedness?
Yeah. It depends on the context and if universities are ready for it. But if universities want to ethically address, this issue and take responsibility for preparing students, they need to use this. And what kind of impact may have? Students may be more aware of the actual demands of university writing. This has been, already told by like Leakey and Carson, SPAC, many years ago. But in the assessment context, because of test practicality reasons or other things, we're not implementing this. After students may be admitted as a post-entry language assessment course, for example, in New Zealand and Australia, they're doing this, but in other parts of the world, they can do this. And for example, in a different study of this project, students who took this test and went to the university, they gave feedback that they actually understood the importance of such texts and helpfulness